The first night on Guadalcanal was supposed to be a holding action. Dig in, stack crates, guard the beachhead until dawn. Then, out beyond the black surf line, the horizon lit like a torn curtain. A dull orange grew into sheets of fire. Men on the ridge above the Lunga paused, spades in their hands, and listened to the ocean boom. It was not thunder, it was cruisers dying. On the water between Savo and Florida Island, Admiral Makawa's column came in tight and fast. Heavy cruisers with long lances racked, destroyers carving white ties into the dark. American lookouts saw nothing until searchlights split the rain. Torpedoes ran like wolves. Shells arced without warning, found steel, and blew it apart. HMS Canberra staggered, her power gone. USS Astoria burned bow to stern. Quincy and Vincennes took blows like fists, then lay over and slipped under. Chicago limped away, bleeding. The night, later called the Battle of Savo Island, belonged to the Japanese. Shoreward, orders changed without ceremony. Surface fire rolled like weather, a loose halo of flame shivered over the channel. At the new aid stations, the lanterns came out and the cots went down. The Marine surgeons had been promised an airstrip by sundown and quiet by midnight. They got boats full of oil-slicked men instead, sailors whose hair was stuck with salt and fuel, whose eyes were too wide. Orderlies counted the living by touch, wrist, throat, chest. Corpsmen slid blades through clothing, dusted wounds with sulfa, pressed morphine syrettes to arms, marked foreheads with a grease pencil so nobody doubled a dose. Plasma hung from lashings, tied to cut saplings. Chaplains moved from cot to cot with a cigarette behind one ear and a book in the other hand, praying when asked, listening when words were all a man had. The field hospitals had names only on paper: 1st Medical Battalion, Beach Dressing Station A, but the tents made their own: Lantern Row, the Green Cathedrals. Coconut groves turned into wards of crates, mosquito nets, sandbags, and a generator that coughed and died and coughed again. At the flap, a corpsman kept a tally: burns, blast, shrapnel, water in the lungs. Rescue boats nosed ashore as if ashamed of their cargo. Their decks were black with ash. Sailors came off smelling like refinery fire, spitting seawater. Some walked by themselves, both hands clamped to the places that hurt. A few were carried by friends who would not let go. One team worked the splints and slings. Another did nothing but wash, salt, diesel, and soot, out of eyes, out of cuts, out of hair. The washing was a kind of triage. If a man could swear while the water stung, he had strength for more. A boy with a farm tan sat up and asked for his ship 3 times, as if repetition might haul her back. A chief petty officer offered to trade his boots for a smoke and a tourniquet. No trade was necessary. The cigarettes were free, the bandages too. Out past the shore glow, survivors clung to rafts and signal lamps, and the lies men tell themselves to keep moving. Some drifted under the lee of Savo and heard breakers yawning on rock. Higgins boats, crewed by sailors who no longer believed in sleep, combed the water. Every rescue made a new wound ashore. More men under the palms, more names for a ledger no one wanted to finish until daylight. Inside, the surgeons worked bare to the waist, skin shining with the same oil they were trying to scrub off their wounded. They cut away burned clothing, a cuff fused to skin, a belt that would not yield. They poured tannic acid on the worst burns, grew grim, tried something else. They argued quietly about who could take ether and who must be held, about whether a leg was a leg or a memory waiting to be made. They made deals with the dark: 1 more hour of generator, 1 more ice tin to cool a fever, 1 more good vein. Offshore, the cruisers kept burning. Now and then a magazine went, and the air punched the lungs. The Japanese column, having dealt its blows, turned for home and left the transport area untouched, a choice that spared the beachhead. By midnight, The men who had been digging that afternoon were loading stretchers. By 2, they could lift without looking. Hands found the right places because hands always do. With first light, the scale became a map. Slicks ran like rivers. Smoke made its own weather. The wounded who could walk were ferried to Tulagi. Those who could not were laid in rows and given numbers that would later become letters carved in stone. A few went to a hospital ship when one risked the channel under neutral lights. A few never took a ride at all. They simply lay where they were and watched the canopy move. In the quiet snatches between boats, news traveled backward through the station. Canberra gone. Astoria gone. Quincy and Vincennes gone. Chicago hurt. The men who had not yet asked began to ask, and the men who knew stopped answering. A corpsman set a lantern on a crate and realized his hands would not stop trembling. He put them in his pockets and kept moving. Someone found a crate of comfort kits, soap, razors, letter paper. None of them would use that day. Someone else counted morphine and discovered the tin bit his lip when he clenched it like a third hand. By afternoon, the Navy started its roll call, ship by ship, name by name. Sailors from different decks of the same lost cruiser met in the shade like cousins at a funeral, the relief of recognition louder than grief for a minute. Then, the quiet closed again. The corpsman learned to sort voices by need, the ones who wanted to talk about home, the ones who talked machinery, the ones who only asked what time it was. They wrote tag after tag in pencil because ink sweats in the island heat. Nobody in the station used the word victory. The word was offshore, with ships that would never answer to it again. On the ridge, Marines returned to their trenches, now watching a sky that had seemed empty at noon the day before and would not feel empty for months. On a beach table under mosquito netting, the surgeons totaled what was left: plasma sacks, ether, gauze. Through the net, they could see the transport masts still standing because the enemy had left them standing. Night came again. Lanterns were trimmed. The ocean lay down and pretended to sleep. Somewhere out there, the wrecks settled in the dark, their steel cooling. In the station, the orderlies moved like the hands of a clock: pulse, breath, dress, turn, while a gramophone somebody had saved played a record with a crack through it. Most men were already somewhere else in their heads, where the ships were whole and the sea held them up. Before dawn, a boat from Tulagi came with clean sheets and more plasma, and a doctor who had slept on the ride over and gave away the sleep like candy. He walked the rows and did not ask for ship names. He asked for first names and hometowns and who to write when it was time. By noon, the boat was back out across a sound soon to be called Iron Bottom, a name the place had earned. After Savo's night, the island learned to expect darkness. The airfield would get a name, Henderson, and the lanterns would be replaced by wiring and bulbs, and then, during raids, by nothing but the old faith in hands and habit. The orderlies who counted the living by touch that first night would count many more. Some would leave for ships that never arrived. Some would remain and build wards from palm trunks and ammunition crates, and the stubborn wish that work could hold a thing together, the ocean tried to pull apart. You can stand on that beach today and hear water mend itself around a sandbar and almost believe that fire does not float. But at night, when the wind freshens, there are still moments when the tide sounds like boots crossing a well deck and lantern glass ticks as it cools. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war.